tell my younger self as far as writing stuff, because a lot of this stuff is organic. You learn it as you go.
It's strange. It's nothing I ever expected.
I want to tell my stories by eliciting emotion in my audience.
So it's an organic process. They sort of layer on top of each other. Each one makes the next layer more obvious to me.
This whole thing could not have gone any smoother.
I usually say squat only in groups of 3. I like to batch it, like squat, squat, squat.
Look, guys, this one's not going to be like normal. It's just not.
Welcome to the Writer's Journey. I'm your host, Lauren Moore, and with me is the mellifluous Kaylin Williams.
That's a big difference. It's like, are you talking or are you doing? What's happening here?
We still have all the pets that think, oh, it's time to eat. It doesn't matter if it's 4 a.m.
My name is Walt, and this is Coffee and Concepts on Keystroke Medium.
Catching up on some light reading. Welcome back, guys.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Hey, is my mic working? I got a notification right as we were going live that my mic wasn't working.
It's working great.
Yes.
The computer lied. Lying
The computer lied.
computer microphone bots.
It went on strike.
Oh man. Well, at least it's actually working.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's actually going good. And how are you guys doing? You look like you showed up. You're here. Smiles on your faces. This is good. Good start.
Doing great.
Happy Friday.
It is Friday.
I tweaked my neck this morning and I can't look that direction. I can only look this direction. So when I drive, I have to like.
What did you do, Scott?
I was going to say, what'd you do?
I was in jiu-jitsu and I tried to use my head to push somebody out of the way, and apparently I never had neck issues, but boy, I heard it go.
Now you do.
Pop.
Pop, pop, pop.
Oh no.
I mean, I have neck issues, but not like in recent memory. But
Oh
I was
boy.
like, wow, that's one of the, you ever do something, you're like, it's okay. But sometimes you do something, you're like, I have to stop immediately.
Yeah, well, when you're younger, you go, yeah, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Nope. And then now when you're older, you're immediately, nope, I'm hurting. I'm down for 3 days.
Yeah. Not going to push it this time.
Scott, I got to tell you, all of your pictures of you coming out of jiu-jitsu, like really sweaty and, like just totally flushed, got me inspired. I'm thinking, hey, maybe I need to learn jiu-jitsu. I need to be brought to the brink of death a couple times and brought back, and maybe I'll learn something from that. But then I was like, well, I could get injured, and then what am I going to do? And now you're just taking it away.
No, yeah.
The dream is gone.
Living a
Crushed dreams.
But the guy teaching us the double leg takedowns, which is hard because you have to like drop low, and it requires a lot of knee and hip mobility, which is, I'm like, well, I'm old. Well, the guy teaching it was 65.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I was like, I guess I'll just shut up and just do the drill.
Yeah, I learned Krav Maga from a colonel in the Vietnam War, I believe.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure about his rank. I shouldn't just throw around ranks like that. I'm pretty sure he said colonel, but
Everybody called him the
now that I
called
think
him
about
the
it, that
colonel.
seems like anyway, he was fantastic. And when he walked me through the different stories of the moves and how you can use the moves to like poke someone's eye out, or
Right.
get their knife, or do the pizza box thing with the gun. I believed those stories. I believed, maybe he had been in those situations and he looked a guy in the eye and then poked it out. I don't know. It could have happened.
Only like one of your eyes. One's got to go.
Yeah. Well, you shock and then run away.
There you go.
Just don't try the 2.
Right.
Which you can block.
Block. Yeah, there's a move for that.
There's a move for that.
Strike fast, no mercy.
Start card.
That's how we read. Read fast, read hard, no mercy.
Read fast, no mercy.
And then again, right before the show. Yay!
Yeah. Yep. Well, I read our 5 chapters like 2 weeks ago, and then we had a bunch of delays, and so I was refreshing a little bit, getting the story back in the old head there. But yeah, so I'm doing. How are you guys doing? I'm just complaining about being all wounded all the time.
Doing well, keeping up with editing. Yeah, just finished off, sent off 1 manuscript, and now I'm reading another one of Blaine Lee Pardoe's Land and Sea series books.
Oh, interesting.
And he's a fantastic writer. Mech battles and alien invasion. So just in on this world and believable characters. So I'm really in the story, but also he's a fantastic writer, and it's just easy to edit. So my job is just a breeze all week, and I'm just getting through the manuscript very quickly, and I love it. Love the productivity.
I was gonna say, you read it once, you're like, maybe I should edit it. It's gonna be bad. I can edit. Got lost in the story.
Yeah, you do get lost in the story, but I like being the aide de camp to the general, and helping him out. Like, oh, comma there. Here's a comma.
There you go.
Yes, Colonel. I think I've had a pretty good week. I don't know. My chart doesn't say I've gotten much on my writing, but it's still editing. I got to one of those chapters where I revise it, and then you're like, I don't like this. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
Let's go back and do it again. It's a little better. I think I'm just gonna have to go on and then come back to it. It's just one of those scenes where it's just, I don't know, those chapters where you're setting up the next few things, and
sometimes it needs to germinate a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
You need to age it like cheese.
Age like a
cheese. Or whatever.
They're going to be one of those aged chapters, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a potato salad. It's better the second day. Just give it a couple days to ferment and the flavors to come out.
Marinate.
Yeah, marinate.
All the isms we can think of.
Let it stew its own juices. Wait.
It's like wine. It just gets better the more you leave it on the shelf.
The more you leave it on the shelf.
300
you
years.
gotta drink it sometime. Well, before we get started, I'm having a nice cream liqueur called Amarula. It's from, I think it's from South Africa. And I found it while I was in Africa, and it's great on the rocks. So
that's nice. World traveler.
Yeah.
I have a signature select grapefruit flavored seltzer water. Another seltzer. I do love my seltzers.
Is that LaCroix or is it LaCroix?
I'm drinking a Mercy By because I saw it at Dillon's and it was on sale. It was a big, ugly looking sale. I'm like, well, I'll try it. I feel like it was neglected, like nobody wanted it. So it's it's fine. It's Corona stuff. Yeah.
It's not part of the Bud Light fiasco, right? It's just neglected because nobody wanted.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nobody's sure of it.
Somebody was like, I'm not sure what that bottle is supposed to be because most Coronas are a clear bottle. But
yeah, what is it? Is it a lager or is it a?
I don't know. I always like the darker beer I can get. So it's just, it doesn't really say it's with lager. It's just a little bit darker Corona, I guess. Can't really read it from here. But yeah, so that's what I like. I like the darker beers if I can get them, but usually they're not very dark. Every now and then I'll get one. Saint Bernardus is the best one I've ever had at a restaurant. Oh, nice. It's really good. I put it in a story recently. I had one of my characters finally made it back to Earth, and he's having a barbecue with his grandfather, who's his only remaining family, and they have some of that. And he's like, "Wow, this is big time," because his grandfather has risen in the world while he was gone. So,
wow,
good stuff.
You
well, cheers, guys, to Osten Ard.
Cheers, to Osten Ard. So, I'll give you a quick recap for folks. We're reading the first book in the Dragonbone Chair trilogy, or quadrilogy if you have paperback. It's the Dragonbone Chair. We're in chapters 21 and 25. It follows the adventures of Simon Mooncalf. Who was a scullion in the Hayhold within Airchester, part of the High Kingdom of Prester John, and where we're at now is he is kind of out of the normal world into the special world of the greater Osten Ard area. He decided, generally speaking, he's heading north to Naglamund, right, where Prince Joshua is supposed to be, and he ends up at the Abbey, or he meets a companion on the road, Benedick, and they end up at the Abbey.
The fan favorite, Benedick.
Yes.
Benedick, yes, fan favorite.
Or
and
Kentucky.
it's been attacked, and there's a couple of guys that are there, a couple of monks. One passes away, has similar dreams-like sequences that Simon has, which tells us Simon is somehow close to the dream world that exists within Osten Ard. And then just as he finds some new shoes, goes by Benedick and gets whacked over the head. Right, that's where we ended in.
And is captured.
Is captured.
Taken prisoner with his new boots on.
The things we'll do for fashion.
Yeah.
Yes.
And later,
it's Italian leather. Austin Powers boots, right?
Worth it.
Yeah.
Worth it. Yeah, worth it. That was so worth it. He's like being dragged. So he wakes up and we get a POV shift, right? Because when you knock somebody out, it's probably good. That's a good opportunity to move to the next character. If you can, right? So we go back to Duke as Grimner, right? Who's I enjoy this character quite a bit.
I like.
He grows on you, right? And you come to find out, you get it from his perspective, right? They were the ones defending the Abbey, or at the Abbey when it was attacked, right? So, so you get a kind of an after action report. Lack of a better term for that, right?
Well, because one of the monks mentions the Northmen and stuff, but then we know who the Northmen were, and I'd suspected it might be them. Initially.
Yes, or someone that looks like them or similar to them.
Yeah,
it could be the opposing
somehow associated
folks, right? Yeah. And you know, he's kind of disregards Simon's kind of a, you know, we found a putz on the road, take him with us. You know, we don't know what to do with him. And
he's curious though, because he's like, he's like, what is he doing here? It's kind of a long ways to be scavenging for shoes.
And he kind of looks familiar, but not familiar enough to really remember him.
He can't remember, but he thinks he should.
Yeah.
So it's a little foreshadowing that's going to become an issue probably at some point.
Right.
My sister's catching up with this book. She's been reading it too. And so she was doing the first, 10, 15 chapters, and she's like, there's so many scenes. There's so many characters. Are you sure all of this is important? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. Every little scene, every little moment, it comes back. And it's Grimnoir. We've seen him before. We've seen him in scenes earlier. The two have met, and now they're meeting, like, for real, for the first time.
Things aren't necessarily forgotten. I mean, Ted Williams doesn't have the tendency to repeat himself often, but the notes, the high notes that I think are important, he does kind of resonate when it comes back up, right? So I think that's what some authors do. I know Brandon Sanderson, who's a great fantasy author, is just, he does a lot of the repetitive, make sure you understand what's happening or what's happened next. And I don't know. I mean, I see appeals to both styles, but I think Ted Williams basically just wants you to sit in his world and just kind of experience it as it exists, rather than, this is going to happen. Remember I told you this is going to happen, 50 pages ago or something like that. So, yeah, there's
a way to do it entertainingly, and there's a way to just be annoying about it. But having a few refreshers is, in a book this size, you kind of need somebody to remind you what you read 200 pages ago.
Yeah.
I encourage, she'll stick with it. I'm sure that she'll get comfortable with the characters, particularly as things kind of narrow in on to the main character, Simon, for a while. She'll get a lot more time with him, and I think it's just settled into it. You've got, 1,200 pages or something of story to read through.
And a bunch.
A lot, yeah. So I think this is a good chapter. I think it's a bit more of kind of does a little bit of walking backwards into what happened before, and then immediately gets into problems, right?
Yes, always more problems.
Yeah, and I think this is where a bit of where you get an indication where Simon is not as forthright as he typically is, right? He usually just says whatever's on his mind. He's not
Right.
much he's great for stories, but he's not a very good liar. Right? So he immediately starts playing the
What he knows is
right?
I know a bard in Eglemand.
Yeah, he starts making up some things that are half truths and outright, made up items because he knows it's Grimner, but he's become suspicious of people from the castle, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which I think is an interesting change in his character. I don't think it means that he's turned sour. He's just become just a little bit wiser, particularly after Brother Caddock, right? The thief.
Yeah.
Kind of left him in the lurch. Yeah.
Well, he doesn't know who to trust. He doesn't really know who was behind the attack on Joshua. So, I mean, he knows, he's pretty sure Pyrotes is behind it and could be Elias. But what about all the nobles who owe him their allegiance? Like, are they in on the plot or not? Can you trust them or not? He knows Duke Scribner is like a man of honor. Like, he's seen that before, but he doesn't know where he's at in the plot and if he himself can trust him. So he's decided not to.
And I think that's where you expose a little bit of Simon's weakness, right? He loves stories and stuff. He doesn't pay attention to everything that's going on around him, right?
Yeah.
I think he knows of people, but he doesn't know them as well as he thinks he should, or we think he should. But he was just a scullion, so.
And I think Tad Williams is probably trying to make sure the reader knows more than this particular character, because a lot of the information, like for example, when he reads the books and he goes to great lengths to explain that he doesn't really understand what he's reading.
Yes.
But they read it anyway, so we know what happened. But he's like, I don't get it. But we just got a whole bunch of information while keeping the tension up for him, keeping him a little bit behind the curve.
Right. Yeah, it's giving us little clues, and then it's also doing like character development, like it's consistent with Simon's character. It's cute.
Yeah,
I found a lot of little things like that.
And then I think we don't get a lot of time. We get a little bit of back and forth between Simon's point of view and back to Duke Grimner's point of view, and then the Buchan attack, right? The diggers, and then that's where they just basically come out of the ground and attack the Duke's men, right?
I love that scene.
And it's almost kind of like a zombie attack in the way it feels, right? Let's come out of the ground. And Simon is like off by himself or trying to run away. Gets grabbed and stuff. But then Benedict and the Kantaka comes to his rescue, right?
Yep.
And then they run off. But that's the scene where he's rescued by Benedict. He reveals the truth, right? That he was actually sent to watch over Simon, right?
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Again, he's been holding a lot of back from Benedict too. What his quest is. He tells him about Morgani's kind of later. He kind of holds back on that too. But they start to reveal the truth, what they truly know, and why they're both there. Benedict's been holding back too.
Right.
Yeah, Benedict's holding back because he's wise, and he doesn't know who Simon is personally, right? He doesn't know, and he doesn't know how much Simon knows. And Simon's just untrusting of everyone, but he's never met a Canuck before. He doesn't.
Right.
He thinks he's a troll. Right? He thinks he's a city person. He's
a troll.
A troll. But I think I think it's great because they spend time together. They're trusting to a point, but they're not sharing, I guess, is where the level of trust starts to go up, and you see a little bit of that as Benedict is essentially forced to tell him more, right? So,
yeah.
There's a lot of great lines in this book, or in this chapter. I don't know if you had any favorite ones. I had a couple of really good ones that I enjoyed. but I'll let you guys go to any of the ones that you really enjoyed.
I really like that kind of attack of the undead on page 327 and 328. As an editor, one thing I liked about it is sometimes in action scenes and in fantasy scenes especially, you have a moment where someone's fighting and the POV character can't see who's attacking him. Well, then how do you write about it? Like, how do you write about a sword flashing at you, or bullets whizzing by, or someone's hand coming out? It's tricky to write about, because if you write exactly what you imagine, then the words as written kind of sound like a disembodied foe, and it's confusing for the reader to picture. Okay, so as an editor, I've come across that scene again and again, especially in new authors writing, where they're writing an action scene and the foe seems disembodied. Here, he's got zombies attacking him, and it's at night. He can't see, so his foe sort of is disembodied. Like, you can't really picture it. So how do you make the reader feel that without getting confused? So I was thinking we could kind of take a look at that scene to see how he does it, and to see what we could kind of learn as authors from that. So it's kind of a big section. So, like, put on your seatbelts, because here we go. All right, page 327. Simon ducked behind the rock that had sheltered him, circling around as he looked frantically for something to protect himself with. A figure hurtled toward him, tumbling to the ground only a pace away. One of the northerners, half of his face a wet ruin. Simon bolted forward to pull the axe from his convulsive grasp. Not yet dead, the man gurgled as Simon dragged the weapon free. A moment later, Simon felt a bony clutch at his knee and whirled to see a hideous little man-like face behind a grasping claw, eyes staring whitely. He swung the axe down at the face as hard as he could and felt a crunch like a beetle ground underfoot. The stiff fingers fell away, and Simon leaped free, gagging. With the light from the sky alternately blooming and dying, it was nearly impossible to tell what was happening. The swaying figures of the Rimmersmen stood all around, but there was a far greater number of hopping, piping demons. It seemed that the best place to... Simon was knocked to the ground without warning, a gripping paw around his neck. He felt the side of his face go down into the mud, tasted it, then heaved up against the thing on his back. A crude blade wickered past his eyes and stuck with a sucking noise in the earth. Simon clambered to his knees, but another hand reached around his face, covering his eyes. It stank of mud and foul water, the fingers squirming like night crawlers. "Where's the axe? I've dropped the axe!" He clambered shakily to his feet, legs wide on the slippery ground, and tried to pry loose the clamping fingers around his windpipe. He stumbled forward, nearly falling again, unable to dislodge the awful strangling thing from his back. The bony hand was cutting off his air, the sharp knees digging at his ribs. He thought he heard the ropey thing squealing in triumph. He managed a few more steps before he dropped to his knees, the din of battle growing faster behind him. His ears roared, strength flowed out of his arms and body like meal from a torn sack. "I'm dying," was all he could think. Before his eyes there was nothing but dull red light. Then the crushing, scratching grip on his throat was suddenly gone. Simon fell heavily on his chest and face and lay gasping. Wheezing, he looked up. Painted against the black sky by a sheet of crackling lightning was a mad silhouette, a man on a wolf, Benebek. So yeah, he's being attacked by something and he can't see it, right? So how does the author convey the struggle and the fight, and still you can kind of visualize what's there?
Yeah. Well, the first several paragraphs there's not a lot of adjectives. It's mostly verbs and nouns. And then there's some, I was skimming back through there, but then you get down to the bottom where he clambered shakily to his feet, legs. In that, there's some descriptions. Let's see, where you have bony hand, sharp knees, and there's a few more adjectives, but in the kind of this middle section up here, it's nouns and verbs are more prevalent. And I think it makes an action scene clearer.
Yeah.
Because, a face in the mud you don't have to say a dirty face in the mud because it's in the, so I think that gives it some clarity because it is a very clear, powerful scene.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't repeat a lot of the same words, and he
Yeah.
uses a lot of striking phrases. Yeah, grasping claw, the eyes staring whitely, crude blade wickered past his eyes, and stuck with a sucking noise in the earth. Like, he's got a lot of details to help you see it, help you feel it, and hear it.
Yeah, it's the sounds, the motions, and what he in the sights that he sees, right? The lightning flashes. It's great.
Yeah.
I think there's a little bit, probably, if you, as an editor, I think that might be a little bit that you've seen. At least I've seen edited out of
it.
This is like this, there's a he very definitely steps aside the use of the word suddenly. He doesn't use suddenly. He uses without warning, which is
right.
Just adjacent. It's adjacent without warning. But it gives you that, he was surprised, right? Without saying, oh, he was surprised, right? He's like, he was just knocked to the ground and he wasn't expecting it, right? And and I think it was another one where he thought something, right? This is something is like, you don't have to.
You probably cut without
warning. Just say, he probably cut out a little bit, but I think it was very tightly written overall.
No, it feels. It's smooth and tight.
Like you said, visceral is probably the word I was looking
visceral.
for. Yeah, visceral. you get pulled into it because I think this is the lesson is that to do that disembodied fight, you have to make it very close, very visceral, to the character itself. So the world that he has collapses to just that interaction, right, with whatever he's fighting with, right? He doesn't see anything around him. It's stumbling, falling, getting beat up, choked, all that kind of stuff. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the foe just kind of like falls over, which is fortunate for our hero because he gets to live another day. Because Benedict, shot one of those poison arrow thingies at him.
Right.
But otherwise, he would have been really. I don't know. Gone.
That's movie poison, right? You get hit by movie poison, you're down like that.
Wow.
there's no struggling. There's no getting into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
You're out.
It's like a taser. Taser knock you. Tasers don't knock you unconscious.
It's a fantasy.
They do it in the
taser.
movie all the time.
But what an entrance for Benedict, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The rescue.
Yeah, to the rescue. The man on the wolf.
Very tiny He-Man.
Well, he looks and sees him kind of, silhouetted. Yep. Yeah.
It's great. There's a couple of really, he used, again, I think we've talked about it multiple times that Tad Williams loves metaphors or like
Nightcrawler.
A lot of his metaphors are animal and creature related, so it's very easy.
Fingers like night crawlers. Is that what I just saw?
Crushing under your foot like a beetle under a boot heel, right? That's
I heard
that's
that.
a very familiar sound. Yeah,
I felt
The
that.
fingers squirming like night crawlers.
Yes.
Good stuff.
I did have one I wanted to mention. The one where it keys into something really weird going on. I thought was a great couple of lines. Just a little before that, Lauren was. Simon's eyes were just drifting closed when the man made an odd grunting noise and dropped his head to look down. Something in the man's stance, something that suggested as though he stood rock still, he was nevertheless struggling, made Simon open his eyes wider. Right, so it's like when you're just falling asleep and you hear a weird sound, you're like, oh, but what was that sound? You're not sure what it was, but something changed.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting that Simon was able to actually catch something like that, right? Yeah. That's a good one. And the other one was when they shout the buchan, right, to warn everyone. There's a great line of just a visual that I thought was great, where he goes, where they go vera buchan, one of the riversmen shouted, and then the next line was great. The men were up now, and in the intermittent flashes, Simon could see the pale fire of their swords and axes. I thought that was a great visual. Where you just kind of get that flash, there's a curve, there's a blade, kind of thing. I thought that was a good visual.
You're seeing the campfire or whatever reflected in the blades.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the possibly mystical lightning that's flashing overhead.
It could be.
He could have just said swords and axes flashing, but But instead he said the pale fire of their swords.
Yeah, pale fire. I like that.
Intimate flashes.
Just give it a little bit of artistic flair.
Yeah.
17 pieces of flair.
Dig it.
So that's chapter 21.
Well, at the very end, it's Benedict. I can't remember if he said this already, but he says he's there to protect him because it was Dr. Morgana's wish, and reiterating that.
Yeah, that's news, right? To him. He's like, he didn't know that Benedict was connected.
Yeah, I
Benedict
couldn't
kind of made it
remember.
sound like they just happened to meet on the road. Nope.
Yeah, that's what Benedict kind of hinted at, right? He was kind of like, "Oh, I'm just, a traveler like you, heading wherever you're heading."
So this was where that was revealed. I couldn't remember where that came exactly, but yeah. So this makes sense why he would be there doing these heroic things.
Mm-hmm.
So, 22.
22, a wind from the north, and we get if you have a
map.
Yeah, look, it's a map, and that's map heading more north, right, to the Thrithings, which is like a Great Plains or steppes, right, to the High Thrithing and Erkenland. That's more south than north. Naban or Naban is south, right? So, this one is another POV shift, right? We've got a good action scene, and now we're gonna go back to the Hayholt.
And the bad guys.
And the bad guys. Bad.
Yes.
With Gulf Wolf, this is a very Nordic name, right?
He's spitting, and there's a line of spittle off his long jaw. He must be a bad guy. Can't control his spit.
Yeah.
No
Spit's
manners.
always a clue.
Yeah. And he's with, he meets with the king, right? Which, of course, now we know that the blade Thorn is always with him, right? As well as Priorities, right?
Right.
Is this the scene where the courtroom is really cold?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, bad guys. They keep the
halls of
temperature way too
Hayholt.
low.
The halls of the Hayholt seem to reek of mold. Mold. Well, it says not corruption. Aromatic citrus.
Yeah. Reeking of mold. That's bad.
And the king is, he kind of a little bit echoes back to Tolkien, right? I feel like this is like the beginnings of Theoden becoming entranced by Saruman and Wormtongue, right? Where his thoughts aren't necessarily quite connected together, right?
Yeah.
There's a good line in it I want to point out here where the king stared into his wine cup as though it were the mouth of a well down which he had dropped something valuable. Completely lost his train of thought right there, right? It's like, oh, that's interesting, And he's orders Gulfwood basically to head north, right?
Yeah.
And then we get another POV shift to I think Rachel, right?
Yes, I love
and
that.
You feel, and you get more of Rachel's how she feels, right? Because we haven't really gotten a lot of back to the Hayholt to see if anybody cares about Simon that's still alive, and of course Rachel.
Well, and I didn't expect Rachel to come back, so that was interesting.
Right? Yeah, and she gets treated. She has some good thoughts about missing Simon, and she's been very worried about him, right? And then she, takes the blame for one of her maids.
Yeah.
Right. So heroism comes in many forms.
Yep.
For Rachel, it's in all the cleaning that she does and her persistent loving of Simon. She's not going to quit loving him. And also, she's willing to take the fall for this girl. Like, get between this girl who there was some kind of accident with the bad guy nobleman, the bad guy. And then Rachel kind of stands up for her a little, or at least puts herself in between the two of them.
The guy that was, that hints at something that we missed, which is
Hi, Kayleen. She's watching the show.
Kayleen, hi. And Facebook user, hello.
Yeah, hello. Where's Miriamel, right? Princess Miriamel. She went back to Miramon.
Apparently.
because we've already seen one person leave. They didn't quite leave until they actually escaped, right? So is that what happened to Miriam? No, we don't know. So
Maybe.
So Fangbald is supposed to be was her betrothed, I guess, which was supposed
And
to.
Fangbald is not good.
Yep.
He's a bad guy.
Makes him look like a jerk in this one.
I get the feeling from this character he has Sam syndrome, right? The short, angry man, right?
Oh.
Where he's got the little bit of a complex or a Napoleon complex, right?
A little.
He just looks like
you
a
know
guy.
who I am? That kind of.
He just, the way he talks makes him somebody who you just want to fist punch.
Exactly, right? You have a very punchable face.
I think you should be punched.
Earl Fangbald, and he was in a foul temper, his arm-swinging walk like a young boy sent away from the supper table, and the loud, deliberate banging of his boot heels on the floor stones trumpeted his mood before him.
Clomp, clomp, clomp.
Yeah, it's good.
I like Rachel's exposure here, where she says she saw the dead boy, and then she's of course thinking about Simon, and then she corrects it. Her dead boy.
Aww.
So
Nice.
That's my boy. So she really kind of internalizes, as much as she yells at him, that it was the child that she took care of, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And you get,
you
always
always
got a little bit of that earlier, but you really get it now that he's gone, right? Or she thinks he's gone or dead.
Yep. And it's probably been a while. I mean, how long do you think the time frame has been?
It's been a couple months, I think.
Yeah, so.
Because I think he is the Anger Stone's stoning day, I think was, I want to say April 1st. And now it's May. So it's been at least a month, if not more. That's my thought.
Yep.
If I remember correctly on the times. So, and then I think we have a little bit of some music, right? And then, then we cut over to Count Eolair, right? Talking. I know, this is a cut to, I think, Naban, right? And then we get a little bit of something that we will see more of later, but this is the king, who is Bene Gesserit, is the brother of Chimerus, right?
Yeah.
The Lancelot of the story, which
right.
I find very interesting. But and you get so time is not great at time as in medieval culture here, but you get who the king was old, so some of his people are old, but not all of them. But you get an idea that I think later on when we see Benedict read a passage from Morganus's manuscript that talks about Chimerus, when he meets Chimerus, and Chimerus is the last, what do you say, the last prince, or the last prince of Naban.
Right.
That he was much younger than Prester John. So that tells you, okay, if Chimerus is still alive, which nobody knows if he is or not, he's not that old. So maybe he's middle-aged now. So, but
he was 15 when they met and dueled.
Yes, and Prester John was already fully mature, probably in his 30s, I would guess, maybe. So.
And Simon's 15 now, 14 or 15.
Interesting, yeah. 15, 16 now, maybe, because I think
15,
we met him
16.
just as around 14 to 15. It's been a year since Elias, almost a year since Elias has been king, or quite some time, right? Where bad things have happened. The weather hasn't been great, so the seasons are hard to keep track of, except that he always drops hints of what month it is. So it's been a while. But I like the world building of Naban. It feels to me, maybe you get a different impression, but I feel like it's post-Roman Empire, or maybe a Dutch Empire, that they had built a great empire and it has now declined, right? But
that makes sense.
There's still a people that's prideful of their past, right? They pride themselves on being
cosmopolitan,
rulers, right?
educated,
sophisticated,
in charge.
They have the court intrigues and
very Venice, or perhaps maybe
definitely that kind of Venice,
because they're on the coast. It's near the water. Maybe it's a little more like Venice, substitute. of the Italian or Roman culture, which I really like that a lot. I really enjoy that. I like the interaction between these two, but you get a little bit of, there's some friction there, right? Between, not so much between the king and Eolair, but between Eolair and Leobardus, which I think is his son. Things aren't super great between them, but I'm not sure. I didn't get any indication whether is that just because he's a young punk that's trying to, impose his will of being the heir, or if he may be related to what Elias's schemes are. Maybe he's making a deal. Who knows?
Yeah.
We don't get that hint yet, right? We don't know that quite so yet. I like these little scenes. There's some great visual imagery here. There's one I love about the water, that where Eolair is just kind of looking out over the sea of the beautiful view that he has, and his mind kind of wanders a little bit, right? He goes, I like to read that one. The waves rushed against the rocks below as though the sea would not be satisfied until its monstrous patience had at last brought the palace tumbling down into its watery grasp. Man, if that doesn't define Venice, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
That's a great line, but I don't know if you guys had any really good lines from this chapter. I don't know. This was a bit of a kaleidoscope chapter where you jump to Gulf Wolf and Rachel, and then to Count Eolair, so you get a little head hopping to get some of the geopolitical state of the world, right, what's going on.
We get a little insight into the religion. Eolair, he sort of sounded like a pantheist a little bit on page 343, where he was talking, we of the Hiristini do not look at the hill streams and say, how can I bring that to my home? We build our homes beside the stream. We do not have a faceless god to glorify with towers taller than the trees of the Kirkoil. We know that the gods live in the trees and in the bones of the earth and in the rivers that splash high as any fountain racing down from the Greinspog mountains. We never wanted to rule the world. He smiled at himself, remembering the tag of the Hirnisadark, a castle made not of stone but wood, oak-hearted to match the hearts of his people. Really now, all we want is to be left alone. Still, with all their years of conquest, perhaps these Naban folk have forgotten sometimes that you have to fight for that, too.
Yep.
Yeah. Now he sounds a little
are the
Hinistiri, yeah.
Much like the, I don't know, Celts? They're pagan, they have
Yeah,
smaller gods, he
yeah.
who walks on sand, right?
The gods in the stream, the gods in the rock, the gods in the hills. Yeah. Yeah, well, we've heard about, right, the goddess in the sky, who married the bird gods. So it could be that there are supernatural beings who are characters too in this world. They could be there. We don't know yet. People are talking about them, but we don't know if they're actual players in the story or just stories. We don't know yet.
Right. That's right. And that's good. I like that. Again, it's kind of, it's info dumping, but not in a way that feels info dumping, right? You're just getting more of the world fabric, right? You're just like,
yeah.
Now we're seeing Count Eolair. I don't know if we've seen his POV before. I know we've encountered him through Duke Grimner's lens, through his POV, but now we get Count Eolair, so he's very Hinistiri, much more probably, like I said, pagan, maybe Celt, that has like smaller gods that are more closer to the earth, or closer held to more personal than, say, a Roman pantheon, or even higher to the monotheistic Edenites, right? So, interesting. I like that bit with him. You get the sense that he's not quite dumb. He's a little bit wiser than he lets on, but I think he's one of those kinds of. He's not like Littlefinger in Game of Thrones. He's not a schemer, but he is watchful, so he does pay attention to what's going on. So
He's alert to his surroundings, what people are saying and doing. He's taking notes.
Yes, he's taking notes, definitely. So he needs to know that because he needs to know which way the wind blows if it shifts.
Yeah,
That's most of that chapter. I thought that was a pretty good chapter, character chapter, I think. Also kind of the shift, again, to the action chapter, kind of reaction chapter. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then we get to chapter 23, back into the heart,
Yeah.
where they decide they have to go back into the old heart, right? To the old
Right. And get away from the ground dirt zombies or whatever.
dirt zombies, the Boogan or Buggin.
Bogan.
The diggers.
This is a scene that I was remembering because I thought it happened earlier, but this is where Benedict says that Morganus sent him. I think.
Back to Simon and Benedict, and they were attacked, and then remember, if you go back, there's a callback here to something that we saw probably 10 chapters ago. And it's pointed out here. I think we know what that's. Remember that great noise that happened? It was like a cracking sound or a falling sound.
Right.
This is before Morganus had died and let Simon escape. Right. Simon. They were still in the castle, and Simon was kind of doing his duties, being Morganus's lackey. Right.
Yeah.
So, I think we get a little bit of a hint here that. That may have hinted at what that actually was, right? So
the stable boy heard it, right?
Yep,
that's the big noise of the.
Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. That it wasn't just a noise in the night. Right? So,
No.
Was that the attack on Ukakuk?
Ukakuk? I think so. I lost my place where it was at. I can't find it. Darn. Oh well, we'll find it later. But I think we also get a little bit of revelation by Benedict. I think we talked a lot about Simon has dreams that seem to be touching into the supernatural. And then in here, I think we actually calls it the Road of Dreams, where we see that the Road of Dreams is kind of a thinning between the supernatural and the real world, and Simon has whether or not that ability, has the effect that he is able to do that, probably unconsciously. Right. Whether it's because of who he is or because he's just been exposed to something, we're not sure. But I think Benedict does think it's wise to pay attention to his dreams.
Right.
I think is important. So, but I think it's a good discussion point. I think, as you said, Lauren, it opens up the sharing between the characters. Benedict, go back to Benedict and Simon after they escaped the Buchan and gotten into the forest, or decide to go into the forest, and Benedict reveals to him that he's not just. He's there to get him, and now we know what the birds are for, right? The bird motif. The birds are messengers between the League of the Scroll, right? Which is kind of the Harpers, or kind of the knowledgeable secret society that is in Osten Ard. The wise men. So Morganus and Benedict. Actually, not specifically Benedict, but I think Benedict's singing man, his master, right? I think was actually remember. So Benedict has kind of inherited that role. Right? So.
Is this where does Benedict realize Morganus is dead here, or did he realize that earlier?
I don't think he realizes that until Simon tells him straight out. In fact, I think it's right in the middle of the chapter where
that's what I was looking for.
Benedict is asking. He's like, Benedict was talking about was still Morganus. A second later, astonishing realization struck. The troll did not know what had happened, and then that's where Simon just tells him. Benedict, he began, and even as he spoke, he felt he was inflicting a kind of wound. He's dead. Dr. Morganus is dead. So, yeah. So a little bit of a twist on the reveal, right? So Benedict reveals that he's there for Dr. Morganus and Simon basically tells him, well, there is no Dr. Morganus. He's gone. right? So your mission is kind of over, right? Because I think the singing man, his master had sent Benedict on to get to Dr. Morganus, right? And he's gone. Simon's the only one that's left. So
Yeah.
It's good. I like this chapter. It says, I think where they really start to open up to each other a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't know, as companions, and I think we get that a little bit more as they get chased, which is the next chapter or start of the next chapter, which ends. I think the chase actually ends in chapter 25. But any other thoughts on chapter 23?
Well, and Benedict reads the memoirs, whatever, Presta John or the biography, or starts reading it, I think.
Yep.
In this chapter.
I think, he starts to read it in this chapter. I think it's the next chapter where, they're traveling along and he asks him to read him something from the book or tell him a story or something. And,
right.
Benedict said, why don't you sing a story? We get another Tad Williams special of, let's write a song. I don't mind it.
Let's do a song.
Yeah.
It's a nice guy.
I find it charming, but I realize that we don't see that very often anymore in at least the fantasy books that I've read lately.
It seemed like it was a thing when I was first reading fantasy that poems and songs and riddles were in fantasy more than they are with the newer stuff that I've read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
We get the name of the big villain on page 357. That's how he ends out the chapter.
The Storm King, right?
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things where Benedict's like, you don't need to say it. Don't say it. Don't say the name.
Yeah, he who has no name or something.
Right, and the young immature punk kid, POV character, main character, says it.
Yeah,
it's gonna say it anyway.
They're my kids. They'd say it over and over again, like every other times after that with the Storm King.
Yeah, this is the scene where Benedict looked quietly around, so he expected something terrible to appear, and then you had thunder rolling about, told on the distant horizon, which made me think of that sound that had happened earlier. I think that's what. Yeah.
Yeah. He says the name, and then it thunders. And...
Frau Brücken.
Yeah, and so that name, he said, his voice incongruously hushed in the midst of such flat emptiness, is of itself a thing to wither crops, to bring fevers and bad dreaming. Rain and bad weather, Simon asked, looking up at the ugly, lowering sky. And other things, Benedict replied, and touched his palm to his jacket just above his heart. End of chapter.
End of chapter, and then Simon has a dream.
No! Time for a dream.
You jinxed it.
Yeah.
I really like his chapter and scene closes. Like, he's always got some kind of little punchy line. Sometimes it's a big punch, sometimes it's a little punch, but he pays attention to the ends of scenes.
He does, and he doesn't. And I recall this very clearly when I was read. I think the first example of it was actually in the Dan Brown novel. I think it was the Da Vinci Code, where they would do those intentional cliffhangers right at the end and then immediately resolve it on the next page. And it was just infuriating. They had to flip the page to read what. And then I think one of Brandon Sanders's his lectures or discussions where he says, you don't do the hit cliffhanger like that. You don't say, we come to the door. And then the next chapter is the doors. And you go open the door and then you present what it is.
Yeah.
That's the ending. And then you're like, that puts the question in your mind. That's what you want to change it. You don't want an exclamation point at the end. You want a question mark, I think. And I think Williams is pretty good at that. Or
a narrative question, a story question.
A narrative question, yeah. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Not to besmirch Dan Brown, he writes gripping books, but his short chapters, those few that would do that. I was like, no.
Dan Brown did lots of things. He did a lot of things in the Da Vinci Code that were like the things you're told never to do, like describe your character looking in the mirror. I was like, oh my God, dude. You didn't...
I have read that so many times, though. We never describe it in a mirror. I was like, how many books in the 80s have I read that this happened?
But yeah. But anyway, yeah, lots of those kind of cheap, hacky tricks, but people seem to have gone past them if the story's good enough. So
his books, especially his later books, had a speed and a rhythm to them, right? I don't know if you read some of the earlier ones; they were a little bit slower and not as gripping. So definitely honed, ratcheting up speed in his books. Yeah. Anyway, a segue to another author.
There you go.
Hounds of Erkenland, chapter 24. Back to Simon. Simon dreamed, right? So this is where Simon has a not really much of a dream, but he dreams of the white tree, I think it is, and it recalls that it's the Green Angel Tower itself. Right. Kind of, is it a dream of what the tree represents, or a dream of where he's touching the road of dreams itself, or it's not sure, but Benedict actually starts talking to him about his dreams, right? So I thought that was interesting. I don't know what it means. The tree.
But we know it's important because it's the name of the next book.
Yep. Is it?
Green Angel Tower.
Green Angel Tower. Yep. In the third and fourth book, or fourth book. But I would love this chapter because this is where you get the story within a story, where Benedict is reading the manuscript as they're traveling,
right?
And they read the passage about Chimerus, and it all kind of turns Simon's recollection of Chimerus kind of on its head, right? He only knows of the stories of, just as you do with your heroes, right? You embellish the good parts and you play down the bad parts, and you miss the truth of what the story really is. And Morgana just says, "This is the way it was." And
yeah,
it was true and yet not true, right? Yes, he was the last prince of Naban, but here's how it happened, right? The king was struck down and his brother was already dead, and therefore he was, by deference, the only one standing up.
Yeah, I was interested by the talk about honor that kind of kept up in this chapter. Honor keeps coming up. It definitely is there with Prester John and Chimerus on page 364. Prester John beats Chimerus and says, "You have many lessons to learn, but you are a brave and noble man. I will do your father and family every courtesy and take good care of your people. I hope in turn you will learn the first lesson, the one I have given you today, and that is this. Honor is a wonderful thing, but it is a means, not an end. A man who starves with honor does not help his family. A king who falls on his sword with honor does not save his kingdom." So the question is, what is honor? And is Prester John right there?
It's a little bit of a lesson, right? Because the scene before that, I think Prester John slips and Chimerus waits for him to get to his feet so they can fight again. And then, Chimerus falls under his horse, I think, and then Prester John waits for them so they can get up and fight again. And then Prester John is at Chimerus's mercy, and Prester John looks around and realizes they're the only two fighting.
Yeah.
He owns the battlefield, and he just kicks Chimerus in the crotch. So that's how he beats Chimerus. It's like, what? And basically he's just saying, I'm not going to kill you, but you need to understand that you're beaten, and there's a way to save your house and your kingdom, and it's not by your death. I think is the lesson. Not honor for honor's sake, but honor for the sake of the greater good rather than yourself.
Well, he showed honor when the horse falls under Chimerus, and then he lets Chimerus get back up to keep fighting. So he could have been merciless and just killed the kid then, but he shows honor by giving his foe a chance to get back up on his feet. And then he pulls a cheap trick when he kicks him. That's not really supposed to be like an honorly swordsman thing, but I don't know if that's necessarily. What do you think? Is that dishonorable to pull any trick again?
Well, I think it's kind of a gray area because he kicks him in the crotch to throw him off, but he doesn't follow through and basically gut him,
Right.
Yeah.
to he just kind of like I'm gonna kick you away and just can teach you a lesson. So I'm not gonna kill you. I've beaten your army. I own the field. I own the kingdom. It's better to take a knee or I can wipe out your entire family line, right? What does honor do? What is useful honor if everybody is dead? I guess is the ultimate lesson. But
Well, is it honor or is that pride?
Yeah, good point.
Right.
It's pride. Yeah.
Because like Kintaka earlier, the wolf shows honor by being loyal to Benebek and sticking with him. Benebek and Kintaka are honorable when they come back for Simon. When he's being attacked by the mud zombies. So there's honor when you do the right thing, even when you might die doing it. Right? That's kind of what I think about doing honor. It's more like integrity. But pride would be like, I am going to die and my whole kingdom's going to die before I give up my power to you.
It's kind of like the where it's kind of taken on a different meaning, because everybody defines it a little. It's a little bit in the eye of the beholder, because what the popular notion of honor in this story world is, and in lots of places, is actually incorrect. Because you hear people like, it's for my honor, my house, but what really mean is pride or standing or status. Or, look how much money I have. That's the honor of my house. Well, that has nothing to do with honor. That's just money. And things like that. And so they think they're confusing honor with glory, maybe. And even then, they might not be defining glory correctly.
Maybe that's the lesson that Professor John is trying to teach him, is that you want me to yield, but why would I yield? I have everything.
Yeah.
You're the last man standing right now.
That's not the way it works. Even if you kill me,
if you kill me, you're gonna get massacred, right?
Right. And as far as kicking in the crotch, I think on a medieval field of battle, I don't think there's really much that's off the table as far as those types of fights. It's like,
Camaris, you need a codpiece.
Yeah. Like, you came to this fight, you're going to get it. And it's better than a knife in the eye, I guess.
I like this kind of humorous line that's at the end of that little tiny scene where I feel like, is he really thinking about it? Because it says right here, Simon pondered this stoically as Benedict returned his cooking things to his bag. Is it like he's still in like the thinker?
Well, and I've come across this in my own writing, is can you have stoicism in a fantasy novel? Because stoa is it's from the word stoa, which is porch, from the Stoics. So you can't have stoicism in a fantasy world unless you have ancient Rome in your story, to have the philosophers and Stoics in the word stoa. It's a little bit of a nitpick,
Well, but is stoicism easy to convey really in a fantasy world either?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you said something like gunsmoke in the story, it's like it doesn't really mean anything in this story world, because they wouldn't have ever had that.
Well, yeah, maybe you might have to call it something else.
That's the conceit of fantasy world, right? Where they translate.
Yeah.
I think we've read, treatises where like the translation into the real,
but then again, if you took that really hard line like I'm describing, it would be almost impossible to write anything.
Yeah, if you spend too much time explaining every fantasy word, then you would.
Well, like I've had people say, how do your characters in your space opera have? Why do they use the phrase where it's a ticking clock? Because they probably haven't had a ticking clock for 10,000 years. I'm like, it's just in the language. That's what, because we have lots of words we use now that we don't know the origin of. That we use in the English language that is probably completely irrelevant to our modern day. Anyway, I'm way off in the weeds here. Somebody should probably rein me back in.
This is a good scene. This is a good scene. I just think there's a good transition here. this is there's a bit of a long song that Simon sings. I think it's called the Old Heart's Deep Dell, I think.
Mhm.
Which I enjoyed. But there's just some little tiny phrases in here that I think there was a joke here that I thought was pretty clever, but hidden here. Where they're getting ready to, I think they're hanging out. They got the 3-sided box of stones around the fire pit to shield the light, right? This is the first time they've actually gotten to eat something since they escaped.
Poor kid.
Yeah, he was a Benedict chortle lifting his firelight tinted base from his bag with triumph. A surprise I was promising you, Simon. A surprise I have. And the joke is, a pleasant surprise, you said? I've had enough of the other kind to last my whole life. True words, Simon.
Right.
Pretty rough the last couple months.
Preaching, Simon.
Yeah, the last surprise you got either attacked or got hit on the head. Yeah. That's a cute little joke that I found charming.
Yeah.
Humor is incredibly hard to write.
It can go so horribly wrong.
It can go horribly wrong. I mean, I think when humor lands, it has to be your kind of humor, and it has to really kind of nail it, you know.
Right. When it works, it's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, and when it doesn't, it can be either dad joke cringeworthy, groaning puns, or really cringe of like, that's terrible. That wasn't funny at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually best for some sort of misunderstanding between the characters is what's easiest.
Yeah. Or humorous little things like, I don't know if you read the Project Hail Mary by Andy Ware. Like, amaze. Yeah, it was humorous.
That was good. It was really good.
I think generally this chapter was fairly. I enjoyed this. Was more of a, again, Benedict and Simon chapter, kind of heading into the woods, and then towards the end of the chapter, that's when they realize, they're being chased, right? So, I did like one little line. Again, I'm just finding these beautiful little, highly crafted sentences that I love sharing. There's one at the very end of the song where it kind of lulls you. Even the words kind of lull you into sleep, almost like soon the hissing of embers quieted, and the only sound was the soft breathing of the wind through the endless trees. It's a great line.
That is nice.
Yeah, and that is chapter 24. Anything else you guys want to remark on that?
The last line, the 30 voices of the dogs boiled up the hillside, a rising song of the closing and the kill.
That's a good, like, big question mark, like, where did this come from? And whose dogs are those?
You're in danger.
Yep. And then we get, now we're back into the action chapter, right? The secret lake. And then they're basically running their tails off.
I'm noticing a pattern. Up, down, up, down, up, down.
That's the rhythm, right?
Yeah.
And it started out very slow, very little action in the beginning of this book, right? But now that he's on an adventure, I'm going on an adventure. I'm getting a little too much adventure now.
Yeah.
All adventured out.
You'll complain about it for the first time or the last time.
Yeah.
Yep. Won't be the first. Yep. Definitely won't be the last for a long while for Simon. But it's, again, you hear the sound of the wolves, but they don't come upon them until very towards the middle of the next chapter, right? So it's more of a keep going, do this, run your butt off, get on the wolf and run because I'm taller. You're short,
right?
Ewok sized person.
It's the Jaws effect.
Ewok model.
You kind of see the effects of the shark on other people and things, and you don't see the shark itself until the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yep. A lot of times you just see the fin or the John Williams music, right?
Or people being
or the view from the shark, but you don't actually see the shark, right, from down below. Yeah. And then we do get an indication of where do we think the wolves are from, right? There's a sign burnt into the flanks, right? The sign of Storm Spike, which is the Norns, but also on the I guess the wolf's collars is I guess the sigil of Urchester or Elias. So again,
Yeah, I like that little
cementing
scene.
that bond between Elias and the Norns, right? So not great. Not great. They'd be continuously confirming that things are not good.
Yeah.
And then I mean, they're running through the forest, right, trying to get to the lake, right, and to Jaloe, which is I think I'm pronouncing that right, or Jaloe, one of the other League of the Scroll members, right? I guess I'm kind of the witch in the woods kind of character, and that's where they're trying to get to, and they don't quite make it, right? Not until
so close
right at the end, right? And they do make it, right? But there was a lot of fighting, a lot of tree climbing, a lot of beating of the wolves, trying to save Kantaka, keep her from, throwing herself at the wolves, because they are, even though she is a wolf and they are hounds, they are many, she is one, right? And
right.
Eventually they'll tear her apart,
Well,
from a pack standpoint.
Simon's honor gets tested in that scene too, right? Because they hear that the wolves are baying, and they also hear a cry, and it kind of sounds like a human kid. So Simon has a choice to make. Is he going to face the wolves for, whoever this is, or is he going to do what Benedict's suggesting, which is run, right? And this is sort of Prester John's logic here, right? Like, what's the use of, he says, honor is a means, not an end, right?
Right.
What's the use of honor if you die for it? Prester John says. And Benedict's kind of got the same thing. It's like, we got to get out of here. Right?
Got to live to fight another day.
We got to live to fight another day.
Yep.
But he wants to make the more, heroic choice of, that sounds like a person. I don't know who it is, but it sounds like a person, and we've got to help him. And that's the choice he chooses to make. And it turns out to be 2 kids that they end up saving. And they live through it, which is good. But yeah, he risked his life and Benedict's and Kantaka's in order to save 2 strangers. What do you think, former cop?
That's an impossible choice.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you're going to do until you get into that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just hard to say.
True.
I mean, from a writer's perspective too, he needs to make. You want your characters need to be as heroic as possible. They can get away with doing the smart thing sometimes, but generally, from a reader standpoint, it's going to be pretty unfulfilling if they don't do. You need heroic to have a powerful story. You got to have heroic characters, and they're going to have to do some heroic stuff. And then I guess it comes down to: is this a plausible? Is there survival or overcoming that plausible, or is now you're just being dumb?
Or is it too easy? Is there some kind of gimme? Is he kind of saved by it? Like all those things can make the scene kind of lame.
Right.
But it doesn't feel forced, though. I think
right.
We've read plenty of books where somebody's like, I'm going to face the whatever because it's my duty. Like,
right.
Nobody ever says that. Let's be honest. Come on.
No.
You always say that after the fact.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of time,
in the moment, you're doing it because it's the right, the right thing, right? But nobody ever says, "I'm doing it for duty and honor." And
in lots of stories, they say the opposite. A lot of what's popular in fiction now is you say like, "No, I'm running away. I'm out for number 1," but then yet they go save the boys or whatever. That's a popular theme. It's like I don't care about anybody, but then all they do is help other people.
Well, that's Han Solo. Right,
Yeah.
we kind of like that rogue character.
I'm not in it for you. I'm in it for
protests
the money.
that it's all in for himself. But then when you actually see his actions, he does the right hard thing
every single time.
It's sort of I mean, we kind of want a redemption story. It's not much of a redemption story. He's already on the good team.
But it's
for
a
real.
test, right? It's a test.
But it's a test. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a test for Simon, and I think I don't know if it's necessarily spelled out here, but if Simon put himself in the other person's shoes, would he want somebody to come help him? I think that may be why he thinks that way, because he's been alone off and on for the last couple of months, right?
His whole life.
Yeah.
I can't stand the thought of what it would be like to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, does he want? He's already been attacked and stolen from, and beaten over the head and all kinds of stuff. Does he? I think there's a little bit of, I think that spark of hero starting to come alive in him. Right, he's got a long way to go because he absolutely knows nothing about how to be a hero. Right, he just knows the stories, and I think he believes now what the right thing is to do besides, like you said, duty, honor for because it's the right thing, or honor for convenience.
Well, he probably still has that misconception of honor, like we talked about before, because his sense of honor is what's told in stories, which in these type of stories, at least, it's not really. It's focusing more on the glory and like some sort of innate God-given power to do right, whereas in reality, it's wandering in the woods and being hungry and still helping somebody else.
Stealing their food.
If I was him in this story, by now I'd be like, do they have a sandwich? Because I'll help them if they got a sandwich. Because I'm pretty hungry right now.
We'll fight for hamburgers.
Yeah. Maybe it'll be a hamburger involved.
Is it the Hamburglar? I'll fight him.
Yeah.
But they do escape, right? Eventually, I think they kill most of the hounds, if not all. But they do manage to escape and continue on. And they think they make it to Jalois, right? The house of Jalois.
Yeah, right.
Which, it's not explicit, but to me, maybe it's just in my imagination or my mind. But it gives me kind of like the Baba Yaga's hut kind of vibes.
Yes.
The house on stilts in the swamp kind of thing.
We get clues.
Yeah.
And the clues build up. Yeah.
Any good scenes or chapters or lines that you liked in this chapter? Again, I feel like this is a little bit more showing of Simon and Benebik's action, the action scene for Simon and Benebik and Kantaka. But it's still also
trying to break
both
down
of their
it.
characters.
I keep wanting to break down and do the highlighting in my book because it's just a paperback. But at the same time, it's my paperback.
It's my paperback.
I need
to
to
get the ebook, right?
Doing some book markers. Yeah.
Well, and who are the kids, right? One is Malachias.
Malachias and Lilith. He says it's his sister, right? But
is it really? That's my question. Is it really? We already got one missing person. And we've seen Malachias before, right? He was the kid that collided with Simon and got him in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah, that he caught spying, right?
Yeah,
They're kind of both spying and they bumped into each other,
Didn't
sort of
he
thing.
Didn't he use Malachias' name when he made up his lie?
Yeah.
No, he used the Harper's name.
No, the Harper's name. I can't remember his name now.
I thought because he said his parents his dad was a chandler.
Oh, maybe he's
Malachias the chandler, but then later he said, "I know a minstrel."
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You're right.
That's funny. And now he's met him.
Oh, there's a bird reference here.
Yeah.
Lauren, in the branches above, squirrels and jays carried on their endless arguments. Crickets droned in the leaf tangled at their feet. Yep.
Oh, I thought you were thinking of right at the end, too.
Yeah, right at the end, right?
This was a beautiful description.
Rush of wings, with a soundless rush of wings, a gray shape tore loose from the trees above them and glided out to circle low over the lake 2 times and then vanish into the darkness beside the cottage. It was the owl, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a moment, Simon thought he saw the owl pass into the cottage, but his eyes were heavy from exhaustion. He could not see clearly. Yep. More bird references. And bird references definitely seem to be more tied to the League of the Scroll than anything, at least in this instance. So,
yeah, beautiful scene ending.
Yeah,
the cricket's night song rose about them as the shadows deepened. A bounding shape came speeding around the lake's rim toward them. Kantaka! Benebik laughed and ran down to meet her. End scene.
Well, what do you think? We are halfway through the Dragonbone Chair. And it's really starting to pick up.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's gone from this slow, weaving of the tapestry of the world, of Simon the nobody, and the things that are happening in the hay-hole, and now he's out in the wild world, and things are just, while not moving at a breakneck speed, things are, the drum beats are moving, right? Things, pieces are all on the board and being moved, right?
The stakes are high. The characters are more interesting. We know them.
Yeah, there's things that we don't know, right? There's Aolaus talking to Benegaris, the king. What's that mean? Is he looking for alliances against King Elias, right? Elias is having Gulfwolf send after Duke Isgrimnur. What's that mean? Is he trying to get rid of upset Isgrimnur and place a figurehead in his place? So things are happening. Of course, Pyrates control over Elias and Thorn, and of course we know where two of the swords are, but we don't know where I think it's Sorrow. We know where Sorrow is, and we know where Memory is, but we don't know where Thorn is, right? Thorn is Chimaeris' sword. Elias has Sorrow, and Brightnail is buried, right?
Excuse me.
So,
Yep.
again, the swords will be important. It's just not important right now. It's good to keep track of where they are, though, because things come together. So.
Oh yeah.
So next book chat will be chapters 26 to 30. Now we're getting on the back half of the.
So we're getting deep
story.
into the second half.
Yeah, deep into the I guess Act 2 or middle build, depending on which book building
paradigm you're using.
Craft book paradigm you're using.
Right.
And I feel like this was a little bit of that midpoint where things turn just a little bit. Simon is he's in the normal world, goes to the special world, gets his butt kicked several times, and then finally wins a fight, against the hounds, and makes it to where he's trying to go. So.
Because like one of my favorite books on that type of thing, on outlining or structure, I guess, is Larry Brooks' Story Engineering, and it says the 3-act structure for movies, you got 3/3, but for books it's more of a 4-part, because you have the intro is 25%, the wrap-ups, and then the middle is 50%. The middle act is actually 2 acts, and at the midpoint everything changes. And you could say literally everything changed when Simon and Benevik came clean with each other. That very nicely, because that completely changes their relationship. It sets them firmly on a course. And so even though I'm sure that Tad Williams did not use that technique, there's some arguments that in Western storytelling, even if you try not to have a 3-act structure, you're going to have a 3-act structure. And even if you're not trying to have a midpoint, you still have a midpoint. It might not be exactly in the middle, but a lot of times it is. Like after I read that book, it talked about World War Z, and it described when the first, they call them plot points, first plot point and the second plot point. So that's the end of the first one, and the second one is the end of the last part. Well, I went and watched the movie, and the first plot point that was supposed to be in a movie 1/3 of the way through, it was exactly 1/3 of the movie. I mean, the second. And then the final plot point where kind of all the heroes have to commit and they have all the tools and allies and stuff, it was exactly the last third. It was almost weird. And I went and looked at several of my favorite movies and books, and that's usually where you get that information. Because if you, like, especially for the second plot point, if you get the information too late, it feels like a Deus Ex Machina, and it's not satisfying.
You made me go back and look. The first end of the first act for this book is, where do you think that is? Where Simon finds out about Prince Joshua is alive.
Right.
That's what turns the story, and
Yeah,
leads
nothing-
him down the path, which kicks him out of the normal world and into the special world, right?
Can't go back
It
to the
was-
normal.
It was him goofing around, hiding from work, and finding this chamber, and then finding Prince Joshua, right? And then immediately the chapter after that is, I gotta go tell somebody I have all kinds of knowledge. All that knowledge gets him in all kinds of trouble. So
It's interesting.
Great point. I went back and looked at chapter 12. That's that
I have mixed
chapter.
feelings on writing a book following the story structure. Sometimes I think you can just write the story and the structure, and then you maybe adjust it if it's a little bit off or something. And that's an argument for another time. But I do think all stories have it, and when they're really fulfilling, those turning points are usually in fairly predictable places in the book.
Yeah, and the turning points can be a lot of different things, right? It doesn't have it's a shift in the story, but the shift can be either subtle or blazingly obvious, right?
Like I
Go
consider
to another
this-
planet,
I consider this subtle is when he's like, "What do you mean Morgana sent you?" That's, to me, that's really kind of the midpoint of the book, and things change there.
Well,
But it's- But it's not like you have to find the sword. It's not something like that.
In that note, he finds out Morgana sent him, but he also finds out Morgana said this kid would be wandering alone. So as he was writing the note, he knew he wouldn't make it out alive.
Yeah.
And that was a revelation for him too.
Yep. It makes you feel a little bit more for Morgana. He's like, that guy was
Yeah.
a hero.
Yeah.
That's what's great about the story, though, is he's gone but not gone, right? The manuscript is a way for Tad
True.
Williams to continue to convey information to Simon. And
It's kind of like Obi-Wan's ghost.
Yeah.
Still deliver some information if you decide you need to, because he's got the book.
That's true from a certain point of view.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Ghost.
All right.
Good stuff.
Great book chat. I thought it was a lot of fun. I know it's been
Yeah.
a hot minute since the last time we did it. But hopefully we'll get back to it here shortly and do this again maybe in another week.
Yeah.
Again, if you're reading along, feel free to, and feel free to comment about it, what you're enjoying.
If you're not, go ahead, start from the beginning and catch up.
You got to catch up. We're
Catch up.
halfway, and we're
Just read 30
what is it?
chapters. By next week, we'll be there.
No big
Get
deal.
in the car.
Barely
Get in the car. We're
inconvenience.
going reading.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's all I have for today. What do you guys have? Anything parting shots?
Nope.
I'm really enjoying this. I love going back and rereading a book that I recall very fondly, and
Yeah.
it's good to see that it has not, I guess, faded in my mind. In fact, it's even refreshed more, and I'm just enjoying it. I think the pace is very appropriate.
The world is very
Epic
rich
fantasy.
and the characters.
Yeah. Well, and this is fun too. Like getting here, chatting with you guys, chatting with the audience, getting back into the book and like seeing what we can find together. It's good.
I'm getting a T-shirt
Enjoy
made
it.
next to say, Team Bennebeck. Bennebeck.
See,
Anything happens to Bennebeck, I'm out.
You're gonna be mad. I'm out.
I'll be on Team Kentucky.
You'll be happy to know that he is
There
in
you
the
go.
next trilogy.
There you go. My dad stopped watching Game of Thrones when Jon Snow died. And I was like, just go back and watch the rest of it.
Yeah, you get. Maybe not though. Right? Get to season 8. You're like, maybe you should punch out.
Yeah,
Wait
yeah. Well,
wait for the books to finish.
I finally started finishing up the House of the Dragon series. So I started to watch it, but I'm so behind in everything that I have a bunch of series like that I really looked forward to, and then I'm just now like a year and a half later finally watching the rest of it.
It's a lot.
It's good.
On the opposite end, I have absolutely zero desire to watch the second season of The Wheel of Time.
No, I was disappointed with that.
So
that
disappointed
series.
in the first season. I'm like,
Yeah,
no.
I am in the same
Pass.
same page there for you. So we'll have to have another show talking about all the disappointed movies that we've watched lately. Because
We should do it. We should do a.
Get
I'm
Richard Fox
disappointed
on.
in whatever. Yeah.
Richard Fox, Josh, and y'all could.
Oh, we can
complain
tear
about the
apart
shows
stuff.
you watch
Tear
or don't
apart. We went, so real short story because I know I'm about to fall asleep, but we went to, I guess we had to be in Vegas, but Josh and Richard Fox, we had just started writing together. Maybe we'd written a couple of books at that point, and we went and saw what was the Marvel movie where, was it Thor Ragnarok, where they have the Hulk Gladiator
It's
stuff.
my friend from work. Yeah, my kids love
Yeah.
that scene.
And Richard Fox like, I want to sit down front, and I never sit down front. I'm like, I can't do it. I'm like, it makes me so uncomfortable to be that close to the screen. So the first time since I was probably like 8, I watched a movie from like basically the front row of the movie theater.
It's a great movie.
Yeah,
So much overload.
I know, and it actually survived it. But I was like, that was kind of fun. When we walked out, and Richard just loved it. He just tore into it. He's very critical of movies and Marvel.
Yes, yeah.
But
And he follows it along, all of the plot details, and he can explain exactly, precisely how it didn't work.
I'm like,
and how could it work better?
And it's true, and I'm guilty of the same thing. But a lot of these days when I go to a movie, I'm just like, I'm just going to watch a movie. I'm not going to think about it too much because most of it's going to be stupid if I.
Well, I think a great movie will draw you in, and you miss the things because you're so pulled into the story. It doesn't happen very often nowadays because I feel like they're just telegraphing everything so badly. It's like I can see it coming, and
I'm pretty easy because I can still enjoy it, but I was never the person that wanted to figure out the movie. Like my friends in high school would be like, "Oh, I figured out the ending." And I never cared or never wanted to, but I find myself doing it now, and sometimes very specifically. And my wife hates me when we watch it, and it's because I know the timing. I'm like, oh, we're 2 towards away a movie. I'm like, that person's they're gonna break in here and shoot that character, and this is gonna happen, and then that's exactly what will happen because it's the only thing that makes any sense to get the movie done. Anyway, I'm rambling, so.
That's what writers do.
Yeah,
next time. Writers do. Yeah, when we're not writing, we're rambling. Either about writing or somebody else is writing. Dang it.
Good deal. Let's pop smoke and come back next time.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk about more next time. Again, 26 to 30. Get to reading, people.
All right. Do it.
Have a great day.
Arm's getting tired.